Right.
Good day, Ames Chamber of Commerce members. Dan Culhane here with Representative Dave Deyoe from House District number 49. Dave, thanks for joining us today.
I'm glad to be here, Dan.
So here we are at the end of 2020, looking towards the legislative session for 2021. What can Ames Chamber of Commerce members and stakeholders expect to see in the 2021 legislative session?
Well, first of all, I mean, obviously, there's going to be a lot of issues to deal with still regarding COVID. I think that'll to start with, how do we actually do the session? How do we, accomplish that without, with distancing and whether masks are required or all those kind of things. There's going to be a ton of questions, I think, for us getting started. I think it's going to change the way the session is structured a little bit. That's particularly, how we do subcommittee meetings and committee meetings, and they're going to be, if people go to, I think they're still going to try and have the Capitol open to people, but there's going to be probably some limits on when people can be there. Maybe a little bit more coordination with different groups to try and make sure that we don't have huge crowds any given day. But then beyond that, when we get into the policy issues, I think you're going to see a number of things that probably are issues that your members will be interested in that have to do with economic growth and getting the state kind of back up on its feet again after this past year. I think there's going to be, the governor, I'm assuming, is going to come out and propose something similar to what she did last year. We don't know yet whether it's going to be the same or if there'll be changes to it, but I'm sure we'll be looking at some tax policy, whether there's some things we can do to reform our taxes to make Iowa a little bit more attractive state. There's still a lot of discussion about some issues that I know you guys are interested in, like some child care and some things like that, that have sometimes create barriers to businesses finding employees. That's some of that. We kind of got to start on that last session, but it got put a little bit on the sidelines with all the COVID stuff. So I think that some of that will get picked up again, and we'll be taking a fresh look at some of those issues. Continue to fund Future Ready Iowa. Broadband, I think, is going to be there'll probably be a bigger emphasis on some broadband issues this year than we've ever seen before, because partly because of all the federal money that's going to be coming our way, that we already know that we're going to be getting. And I think there'll be some I don't know if we may need to do some things just to make sure that some of our language is in our code is up to speed with what we need. And on that issue, I think that's a huge issue for economic development here in Iowa. Broadband, we of course we always knew it was going to be important, but we sure really learned this year, as can attest us sitting here right now on the internet with the two of us talking to each other this way. Broadband was already an important issue, and it's become even more important after COVID.
Without a doubt, it's ironic that as you started to talk about broadband, your internet started to cut out, and that's really indicative of how important and critical it is. And we'll talk a bit about that more in a moment. As you look at the session personally, Dave, what do you see as things that you're really focused on behalf of your district, and the things that you're going to be most focused on going into 2021?
Well, I'm chair of labor again, so there's always as the chair of a committee, you always are looking at issues that might come through your committee. So an issue that I've had some discussions about our unemployment system, and there's probably been a few strains on that this year with the huge ramp up and the number of people getting unemployment. So I think we're going to be looking at that to do a little bit of a look back and see how well everything worked. There are, probably some issues with some things that we could do to change some of the rules within the unemployment system. the economy was really steaming along last year at this time. When we would have talked, a year ago, the economy was really hot, very low unemployment, extremely low, small number of people on unemployment, but yet we still had never gotten back to table 8 on the unemployment rates, which is the lowest rate. And we should have, in the past, we would have gotten back to that lowest tax rate for employers, and we never quite got there because of some things that have been changed over the years. And I think we need to look at that system and see if we can make it more competitive and get it back to a point where we can get back to that lowest rate again. I feel very proud, though, of the fact that we've managed to get through this year and haven't had to raise unemployment taxes. So as a committee chair of labor, that's probably the biggest issue I'm focused on in labor right now. There are, probably going to be some smaller local issues. On local government again this year, there might be some issues I might be looking at a little bit there. Might look to resurrect a bill that we did a couple of years ago dealing with county supervisors and how they're elected. That's some smaller local issues. There'll always be, obviously, everybody's going to be involved in the effort on taxes and what we do with that, and because that's going to be a huge discussion that hopefully we get the governor's proposal a lot earlier this year. Last year it was pretty late before she came out with her proposal, and that Invest in Iowa proposal was so complex, there just wasn't enough time, to deal with that. I hope we have a little more time to look at that a little, and I'm sure I'll be very involved in that too, in some of those discussions of how we reform our taxes.
So your sense is the Invest in Iowa initiative will come back this session?
I think the governor will propose either the same thing or something similar.
Okay.
Would be my guess. I would assume that would probably come back again in some form. I'm not sure that last year, I don't really think she had the votes to get it passed last year. Like I said, it was complex. It had a lot of moving parts. There were parts that were unpopular within it. I think the overall package was a pretty good plan. I told her I would support it, but it wasn't. It was something that was going to be hard to get past, quite honestly, I think. So I don't know if she's going to come out with the same thing. But I think there's definitely some priorities in there for me. Particularly getting our income tax rates lower, making our tax system a little simpler and a little fairer. I think there's some things we can do with that would have a big impact on Iowa's competitiveness, and
sure,
still be able to raise enough revenue to maintain, some of the priority programs that we have.
Yeah, no doubt there's a number of moving parts in that piece of legislation. One thing where there seemed to be a lot of solidarity was behind broadband and enhancing broadband across our state. And in looking at your district in particular, I believe you got at least one, if not two, telephone cooperatives that are part of your district. What do you see for broadband discussion and activities as we move through the 21 session, Dave?
Yeah, I think probably the trickiest part of the whole broadband issue, and you mentioned telephone co-ops, and I've got a couple of them that are really, really good. Particularly Colo Telephone. Everybody on the Colo system is fiber optic to the home. The system down at Huxley Communications, they're getting close to there. They're working towards that. They've made some really good progress. But then you've got some of the sort of older companies, like Windstream in Nevada that, Nevada now is, is having somebody else come in. I think Ames now has signed on to this too, to try and get a little more broadband into town. And really some of the co-op systems have been a lot better at getting up to speed than some of those larger companies have. And there's probably some resistance to giving those larger companies a whole lot of money to do this, and I think that's been one of the struggles in the past, is trying to figure out how to be fair to everybody. But we obviously we do need to get to a point where people have more, fiber optic and more, better broadband service. And this year, I think there's going to be a lot more federal money than we've ever had before available. Maybe the state, we may be able to come up with some more things for some one-time, infrastructure type projects that might fit into a way to sort of, to deal with the, we're going to have these large ending balances. It looks like the budget's in great shape. We don't want to endanger that. We want to make sure that those budgets, the budget stays in really good shape, because it certainly helped us, get through this coronavirus thing. We got through this probably better than almost any other state, and we want to make sure we maintain that. But there may be some money there that could be used for one time for projects that might help with, and interest. When I think of infrastructure, for individuals and businesses, probably broadband is probably the biggest thing.
Yes, I'd agree. It seems like if there was a silver lining that was involved with the pandemic, it's that we all became astute at using devices like these as it relates to communicating virtually. And it's a pretty powerful tool that has been very advantageous throughout this pandemic and allowing people to work from home and providing flexibility to people. So, yeah, I think broadband will be something that our organization continues to pursue for you and others to support as you go through the session. Dave, clearly here in Ames and in Story County, Iowa State University is front and center as it relates to top of mind types of industries. I often say that we are a company town, and that company's Iowa State. And as Ames goes, or as Iowa State goes, so goes Ames in many respects. But whether it's Iowa State, Des Moines Area Community College, also a great economic development partner, or our K-12 systems, public education always gets a fair amount of the oxygen at the legislative level. As you look at the 21 session, how do you see those entities faring throughout the process?
Yeah. I think let's start with K-12, because that's usually where the discussion starts at the legislature, since it's close to 45% of all of the state funding. And because they sort of get the first bite at the apple, because we usually figure we've got to get them some answers, probably by the end of March, so they can start getting their budgets put together, so they know how, because it's such a huge part of their funding. It's most of their funding is either that or property taxes. And so we'll make a decision early on what K-12 gets. My hunch is that it'll probably be a bit bigger increase than what they've been getting. And I think part of it is, I think there's going to be some recognition that with COVID, there's been some extra expenses for them. Coming into this past fall, there's been some things that they've had to take on that were new expenditures. And I think they'll end up getting plus the fact that the budget's in such good shape, I think they'll end up getting an increase that's maybe a little bigger than what they've got in the last couple of years.
I see.
Then move on to the secondary education. Community colleges have a huge amount of support in the legislature. Everybody kind of recognizes them as sort of being the really key to the economic development and job retraining for people, particularly for adults and those type of things. And so I think they'll continue to get probably, they've had some enrollment declines, and so have the regents. There may be some discussion of how much more they really need if their enrollment is declining, but I still sense that the community colleges are still going to fare pretty well. May not get everything they ask for, but I'm a little concerned right now about the regents. I think there's going to be a lot of resistance to giving the regents all that they're asking for, and I'm telling you this coming as somebody who is a big supporter of the Regents and having a lot of people that work for the Regents that live in my district, and you know, being close to Ames and everything. I always am fighting for the Regents to make sure that people understand the issues that you know, that they're dealing with. But there, you know, there's sort of a I guess sort of a thought out there that, you know, the tuition is high, you know, they have seen some reductions in the number of students at all three of the regions. Do they still need to get the same amount of support? I think there's a lot of people in the legislature whose districts are a long ways away from the Regents, and they don't see the Regents as something that really impacts their district very much. And so it's something that I'll have to work on to try and, you know, educate members, particularly with Iowa State, because I think Iowa State actually does touch every part of the state, you know, particularly when you look at programs like extension and
yeah, in a significant way.
Some of the research projects that they do, the research park and the impact that has all around the state, you know, with companies that may, you know, we've got a lot of great companies that are ag-related that have located there, and that has an impact on the whole state of Iowa. So I'm going to have to continue to work on trying to educate my colleagues on the importance of that funding. But I think it's going to be a tough struggle this year to try and get the Regents all the money that they've asked for, and they're asking for an increase, a bigger increase this year, I think, than they've asked for in the past. And I kind of see that as something that's going to be a difficult fight to have, but we'll try and see what we can get accomplished.
Well, without question, your support and advocacy on behalf of the institution is always appreciated. I know that, and you are right. I think the further you get away from any of the region institution communities, it's sometimes a little more challenging to see the impact. While it's incredibly significant, we see it because we're so close to it as an economic driver, not only for Story County and Ames, but central Iowa, but it transcends those places as well. And like you said, covers all corners of the state.
Yeah.
Here's kind of an easier question, or kind of a fun one, Dave. As you think about the 2021 session, Ames Day at the Capitol, Ames and Story County Day at the Capitol is scheduled for April 1st. In all seriousness, no April Fools there. And I'm wondering, do you think we'll have it in person, or will we have to kick the can down the road to a later time of year, maybe to 2022?
Well, everybody's always looked forward to having Hickory Park in there, you know, and having and getting a really good lunch and everything. I think there's going to be, so some of this is sort of a little above my pay grade. There's a lot of discussions going on. I've heard through the grapevine that there's probably going to be a little bit more careful consideration of how do we kind of limit the size of crowds in the building and stuff like that. And that for sure, there'll probably be some consideration of, you know, if there is an Ames Day, there won't be probably anybody else there at the Capitol that day, and they may have to restrict who can be there and spread it out a little bit more so that you don't have, sometimes you would have 2 or 3 different events going on at the same time and have the building really be packed, you know, and really full of a lot of people. I think there's going to be a little bit more effort to coordinate some of those things better. At this point, I guess the one thing you have going in your favor, if all the way into April, is maybe I'm kind of hopeful by that time that a lot of us will have gotten vaccinated by then, and maybe the number. I think maybe we've seen the peak in the cases. I hope, you know, kind of hope that a couple of weeks before Thanksgiving was when we peaked here in Iowa. It looks like right now to me, as far as new cases, and I'm hoping that trend continues and we continue to see new cases starting to fall, particularly after people start getting vaccinated. So
sure.
I guess at this point, my crystal ball is kind of cloudy on that issue, so I'm not sure I can help you too much on that.
I understand. Well, let's hope we can be there in person. You know, it's a great way for us to showcase all that's going on here in our marketplace, and at the same time, express gratitude. The state's a heavy investor in this community, and And so we're always grateful for that. It's a good way to say thank you as well. Dave, as we look at the 21 session, what's the best way for chamber members to reach out to you? How do you like to be communicated?
Well, email is always good because it's, you know, because usually we try and keep up with those, and I get, you know, we'll probably know that somebody's contacted me right away. That email address would be dave.dio@legis.iowa.gov, and then you know, even if it's on a weekend or something like that, feel free to call my home number, and that's 515-382-2352. It's listed. You can find it on the internet. If you don't have something to write it down, and go ahead and you know, give me a call. You might have to leave a message, but I listen to those usually as soon as I walk in the door. So I'll be able to get back to somebody if they call me at home. And I hopefully we can get back to a point where we are doing more in-person things, and
Indeed.
And actually people we can meet in person, and if somebody has an issue or something like that, we can deal with some of those things a little bit more face to face, I hope someday.
Yes, it's long overdue.
Mm-hmm.
Dave, our time's almost up. Any final thoughts for our members as we move into the 2021 legislative session?
Oh, I think we're all hoping for a better year next year. No, not too many of us are going to be sad to see the end of 2020, and so I'm optimistic. I'm looking forward to 2021. I'm very hopeful it'll be a better year than this last year was.
You and me both, Dave. Well, listen, it's been a pleasure. Representative Dave Deyoe from District House number 49 joining us today. Dave, all the best for a great 2021 legislative session. And